of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So
with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this great country of ours, welcome to another edition of Character Matters. I'm Dr. George Simon. This is a program where we talk about the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that has plagued much of the free world, indeed many areas of the world. The character crisis that I believe poses the greatest threat to our freedom, freedom being entirely dependent upon those folks who uphold the values and standards that civilized society must endorse in order to prosper. And when we know from our very founding of this country, our founding fathers believed sincerely that if people of decent moral character were left alone, were not intruded upon by an oppressive government, if they were left to their own devices and pretty much left to pursue their own hopes and dreams, that they would not only prosper themselves, but they would create opportunities for others, and they would therefore build a great society. And that is indeed what happened in this great country of ours. I say great country a little reservedly now, because I do believe that we have had both times of unprecedented greatness as well as times of not so great character. And I believe that we are in one of those times right now where we are not as great as we could be as a country, primarily because of the character crisis that we've been in for many years. Ours is the age, as I like to say in my books, In Sheep's Clothing and Character Disturbance, ours is the age of entitlement and permissiveness, especially the age of entitlement. And because of that, we have had to face some pretty unique problems. And those problems would be remedied in large measure once we reclaim those principles upon which great societies are based. And to do that requires that everybody do their part to be the kind of person that they can be and to uphold the kinds of values that we all want to uphold. I have a brand new series on my blog, on my personal blog at www.manipulative-people.com. A brand new series that began this past Friday on the problems that can occur when persons of disturbed or disordered characters also happen to be substance abusers, and especially when folks who have significant character issues enter into treatment, sometimes quite unwillingly, forced into treatment by concerned family members and friends who recognize that there is a problem. Of course, many times folks who have the problems and who also have significant disturbances of character deny their problems and deny especially the problems associated with their substance use. They're getting still too much out of their use to consider putting that away for the greater good. And so many times they're coerced into treatment. And my experience is that usually doesn't go too well. And I can't tell you the number of emails that I've gotten over the years, probably in the hundreds of, if maybe the thousands of emails I've gotten over the years from readers of my blog articles and especially my books, who will tell me the horror stories that they have been through with friends or family members who have been pressured into treatment of one type or another. And many of these families have undergone great financial hardship. They've spent a lot of money that insurance wouldn't cover, or maybe insurance wouldn't cover the treatment at all, and they had to use their life savings just to get someone the quote-unquote help that they thought that they needed to turn their lives around, only to find their resources drained and the person quickly returning to old ways once they were no longer in the restrictive confines of treatment. And this is truly a tragedy, but it has its roots in the fact that most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time, folks who exhibit problematic use patterns also have character issues which need to be addressed in treatment. And many times the treatment models that we use are insufficient to address these problems. And so the character issues remain. I'm going to speak to those a little bit today. I'm going to be talking about the series of articles that we'll be running on the blog. And I invite those of you who have firsthand experience with individuals who have been in treatment of one type or another, not just for substance abuse, but for various types of quote-unquote addictive behaviors. These days, you know, it's politically correct to frame just about every entrenched bad behavioral habit as an addiction. And while there's some merit to this conceptualization, sometimes this framework is overutilized. It is overdiagnosed, and I'll have something to say about that later. But many of you have gone through the experience of getting someone into treatment only to find that some limited benefits were gained for a while, but then those benefits slowly eroded and the person returned to some pretty bad ways. Or you also might have had the experience where perhaps they're even being sober. Perhaps the person who's got the problems has even managed to maintain sobriety, but because all of the other character issues remain and they weren't sufficiently addressed in treatment, living and dealing with them can still be a nightmare. So for those of you who have had these experiences and want to share, or you have questions you want to ask, and you want to join the conversation in any way, the number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I'll be happy to take your call. Maybe you have a story to share an experience to share that might help someone else, or maybe you just have a question to ask. But tonight's show is going to be dedicated to addressing these issues. That will be the subject of a forthcoming series on my manipulative-people.com blog. I also have some related articles on the www.counseling, with two L's, by the way, .com resource blog. That's www.counselingresource.com. A new article posted just this past week, as new articles post every week on the blog that I write. And I also want to call your attention to my 3 books: In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, the international bestseller. I told you a couple of weeks ago that I have news for you about some new foreign rights licenses for In Sheep's Clothing, and it looks like the folks in Brazil, in the Portuguese language, and in Russia, and in Japan will soon have new editions of the international bestseller In Sheep's Clothing, the go-to book on understanding and dealing with manipulative people. And thanks to you, the listening audience and the readership, for making that so. It's been primarily word of mouth over a 19-year period that has made that book such a mainstay, and some regard the definitive study on manipulative people. And also, I want to call your attention to Character Disturbance, the Phenomenon of Our Age, which was my follow-up book to In Sheep's Clothing, and is a much broader study of the character issues of our time. It takes a look at the various disturbances of character, not just manipulative folks, but all types of disturbed characters, what makes these folks tick, what it is about these folks that makes living with them so difficult, and how to deal effectively with such folks, and how to get the right kind of help when you're seeking help. Because dealing with character disturbance is not the same as regular talk therapy. Good old-fashioned neurotic individuals, as we are wont to call them in the psychology trade, folks who are unnerved by certain things. They're anxious and upset, dealing with internal emotional conflicts, many of which are unconscious to them. These are the kinds of folks that talk therapy was made for. It's the kind of thing where folks who are basically of decent character can come in and kind of unload some things off their chest, excuse me, and work some issues through. Standard talk therapy is meant for that. But a regular talk therapy is just not appropriate, nor will it be effective for those folks who have significant disturbances and deficiencies of character. Folks whose problems arise not so much from their unconscious inner conflicts, but from who they are as a person, from their deficiencies in character, from their deficiencies in conscience, especially. There are those folks who are overly hung up, so shall we say. They take life so seriously that they get unnerved just about every little thing that goes wrong in their life. They try so hard to do things right. And then there are those folks who basically don't try hard enough, who don't get hung up enough over the things that they let themselves do. And these are the folks who we call character disturbed, and these are the folks who oftentimes cause the kinds of problems that drive folks in relationships with them to the brink. And talk therapy was never meant to help these kinds of folks. So a whole different approach is necessary. And this, by the way, is often what's at stake when someone goes into treatment and they have either substance abuse or other addictive behavior problems, and they also have some character issues. If the therapy involves traditional group therapies and traditional insight-oriented talk therapies, they're likely to gain some benefit, but they're not going to gain maximum benefit. Why? Because the therapies aren't targeted toward really zooming in on and dealing with those character deficiencies that are at the root of problems. And if you'll recall from last week's show, for those of you who tuned in, and for the benefit of those who weren't able to tune in last week, where the program was dedicated to the erroneous ways of thinking that disturbed characters are predisposed to, what we think really matters. How we think about things really matters. The way we look at the world, the way we see our place in the world, the way we see our best way to deal with things in the world, our attitudes about things. In short, the way we think really shapes our behavior patterns. It influences them greatly. They're very deliberately, they're very inextricably connected to one another. For example, a person who believes that it is the duty of a spouse to be subservient and to take second place in the relationship and to speak when spoken to and not otherwise, and to be dutiful and to always respect the higher authority in the home. This kind of attitude is likely to predict fairly well what kinds of behaviors this person will engage in toward their spouse. So it should be no surprise, for example, that a person who thinks that way, thinks in those terms, might be somewhat emotionally, maybe even otherwise abusive, maybe verbally abusive in their relationships. Those attitudes influence behavior. We know this is the heart of good therapy with disturbed characters, that our ways of thinking influence heavily how we behave. And so in treatment, especially in residential treatment, in these programs that hold people captive for 28 days or so, where they have an attentive audience for at least that period of time, or at least we hope they are. During these times, if the right kinds of confrontational exercises are used to call people on their dysfunctional ways of thinking, to challenge them to take a look at these ways of thinking and to correct erroneous ways of thinking, problematic attitudes, dysfunctional, antisocial attitudes, then there's a chance that the person can actually learn to do better, especially when they're rewarded heavily for trying out new ways of behaving and for trying out new ways of thinking about things. So it's a whole different ballgame when it comes to dealing with character disturbance. And many folks who have read my books and my blog articles and who have had the requisite experience know this firsthand. And if you're one of those folks and you want to join the conversation, once again, the phone number to call is area code 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. And join the conversation. I'm hoping that the phones are turned over and ready to be answered tonight. I haven't gotten an answer yet from the producer, so I'm hoping that that's the case. But at any rate, I'll be happy to accept your call if, in fact, the switchboard is working tonight. I mentioned that I was going to be talking about the 3 articles or 4 articles that are upcoming on the blog. I also mentioned the books In Sheep's Clothing and Character Disturbance. I want to also mention The Judas Syndrome, my first book for the Christian audience, which has been out now for about a year and a half, published by Abingdon Press. It's the first book, like I said, that I have written on these topics specifically for the Christian audience, and I want to thank the readership out there for the great word of mouth and the great reviews that have been posted on Amazon and some of the other sites for helping to make this book equally popular to the other books, and I'm so grateful for that. I really had some apprehension about writing a book targeted to this specific audience because I hadn't done it before and never even had a thought to do it. So when I was asked to do it, I was really hesitant and I was really nervous about it. But with a lot of help, it got done and it finally got published a year and a half ago. And I couldn't be more pleased with the response. So to all of you folks out there who have spread the good word, I really appreciate it. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. There's no better advertising in the world than good word of mouth. But back to the subject at hand. I have counseled probably thousands of individuals over the years who have had some form of substance use problem, maybe not a full-blown addiction, but some kind of substance use problem, along with some significant character issues that they needed to work out. And one of the things that I learned early on in my work with individuals is that folks tend to have a certain kind of character to their relationships in general that doesn't just extend to their spouse or to any other significant other. What I mean by that is, let's take, for example, manipulative characters. Well, manipulative characters by nature, the folks with hidden agendas all the time, the folks that want to look good but always have a hidden ulterior motive and use certain tactics to get the better of you, folks who operate with that modus operandi, with that MO, folks who tend to do that in a wide variety of situations and with different folks. They don't just manipulate their wife or their husband or their significant other or their child. They tend to be manipulative with everybody, their coworkers, maybe their supervisors. They tend to do this kind of behavior in a wide variety of circumstances and with a wide variety of people. And what I learned early on in my work with folks who had substance use problems, as well as character issues, is that the way they related to their substance of choice often mirrored how they related in character to other people, to significant others in their lives. In psychology, we have this school of thought called object relations, which examines how a person tends to try to cope with their environment, with the objects, with the entities, is a better word perhaps, in their outer environment. And they learn strategies to cope with those entities. And whatever seems to work for them kind of becomes habitual. And they develop a style of interacting with the various entities in their environment? Well, I found that folks related to their substances of choice in a characteristic way. For example, they tended to want they tended to want that substance to do something for them, usually to alter their mood, whatever their mood was. If they were angry, if they were anxious, if they were upset, if they were in a quandary, if they were in turmoil, whatever their mood was, if they were elated, if they were depressed, whatever their mood was, they wanted that substance to change the mood, to alter the mood. So they were making a demand of that substance to make a change for them that they either would not or could not do for themselves. Usually would not. Usually could not was not the issue. They could, but that would require a lot of effort. So they usually would not because it was too tough to do it on their own. And so basically they were asking the substance to do it for them and to do it now, quickly, which is why, as soon as they got home and they were mumbling under their breath already about what the boss told them that day and mumbling and grumbling, had them upset, they're in the door mumbling and grumbling, and they're going straight to the refrigerator and yanking that can of beer out and popping the top as soon as they get there. Because they want that change of mood. They want that relief. And when do they want it? They want it now. And what I found is that folks with that kind of predisposition also tended to relate to their significant others in the same manner, in the same way. They tended to want the other person in their relationship to tend to their needs and to make things better, whatever their mood was. If they were angry, if they were troubled, if they were in turmoil, if they were anxious, they were scared, if they were elated, if they were sad, they wanted the other person to change that for them because they either would not or could not do that for themselves. Usually, as I said, would not, because doing it on their own, even though they could, would take way too much effort, way more effort than they were prepared to give. So they would demand that of their significant other. They would relate to the significant other in the same manner they related to their substance of choice. It was really an interesting revelation. And so what I found was that when these folks came out of treatment, even if they maintained sobriety, even if they did, if there was no change, if there were no significant change in the manner in which they related, if someone hadn't challenged them and invited them to take a serious look at and to correct the manner in which they tended to relate to and treat the significant entities in their life, if that wasn't done, life with this person, even after treatment, might be a little bit better because at least they weren't drunk all the time and tearing the place up and going on tirades or whatever the case may be. Or at least they weren't high as a kite and doing all kinds of things that they did when they were high. But life with them was still pretty miserable. And why? Because there was no significant change in the way in which they related. There was no significant change of character. And I always found that puzzling because a lot of treatment programs, and I'm going to be addressing this in a couple of the follow-up posts in this coming series on manipulative-people.com. This has always been puzzling to me because a lot of the best programs in the country follow a 12-step model that was popularized by AA many, many years ago. And I have to tell you, when I first delved into the psychology of the 12 steps, especially the first 3 steps, actually the first 6 steps, most especially the first 3. But when I first got into the psychology of those steps and got to know the underlying psychology and how powerful a psychology it is and how much power it has for a person who in their heart sincerely takes those steps, how much power there is for them to change their lives, I was totally blown away. And I witnessed it many times. I've had the good fortune to witness many individuals sincerely take those steps. Now, taking these steps is a matter of the heart, not the lips. In AA and in recovery groups, they call it talking the talk versus walking the walk. It's much like a profession of faith. I mentioned this in Judas syndrome. As a matter of fact, that's what the Judas syndrome is all about. How our actions that don't match our words, our profession of faith, betray us, just like Judas betrayed himself and his lack of faith. Betray our lack of faith when we act not in the principles that our faith dictates, but rather out of our own purely selfish desires. So we betray our lack of faith. And so in AA and in recovery groups that follow this model, there are these steps that are not meant to just be uttered on the lips. They have to be taken to heart. And the psychology of them, when they are taken to heart, is really powerful. Now, I do consultations with individuals from all over the world. And I, many times, deal with folks who are basically kind of coerced into it by a spouse who has come to my website or to my blog and who is desperate for some help because the person that they spent a fortune trying to get help and treatment has come out of treatment now and is a little better because at least they're sober, but they're still hell on wheels to deal with. And they're praying for a miracle in their life. And they're grasping at straws and looking for any help that they can get. And they've heard me talk time and time again about the importance of addressing character issues and within an entirely different framework. So I'll come across folks who have been referred in this way, and I'll do these face-to-face consultations, either via Skype or FaceTime, with individuals all over the world. And if they have been in treatment, and if they have been in a treatment program that has been styled on the 12 steps, or they have been in adjunctive AA meetings as a part and parcel of their participation in treatment, the first thing I will ask these folks is to recite for me the first 3 steps, starting with the first step. And it is just amazing how many individuals, when it comes to the first step, will start hemming and I can't even talk tonight. Hemming and hawing and giving me something kind of close to a first step, maybe one or two words in there. And they've only been out of treatment, say maybe a month or so. And they faced these things every single day, 24 hours a day for 28 days, some days for 56, sometimes for 56 days, many times for 2, 3, or 4 or 5 months. Some folks, 6 solid months in treatment. And they're only out a brief time, and they can't even on their lips utter the first step. And there's a reason for that. The reason is because in treatment, when they had to parrot it back, they did just that. They parroted all right. But did they take it seriously? Did they take it in? Did they contemplate the meaning of it? When they were working with their sponsor, did they really delve into what the folks in AA call step work? There are all these materials that they were likely given in treatment to help enhance knowledge of the deeper meaning and psychology behind all of these things. Did they come to a place where they've at least acknowledged what the problem is? And have they admitted powerlessness over it? Have they acknowledged that their way wasn't working, that they couldn't do it anymore without help, that they needed an external, stronger source, a higher power, to bring them to sanity, bring them back to sanity? Did they take all this seriously, to heart? And if they did, why are they having trouble regurgitating this material, or at least giving the meaning of it? So I always ask those questions, and I'm no longer surprised by the answers I get, because I already know when somebody has made contact with me and begged me to see someone or consult with someone in a face-to-face consultation, either by Skype or FaceTime, and this person has already been through a month or 2 or 3 of treatment, and yet they're reaching out to me for this consultation, I already know that they haven't contemplated very seriously the deeper meaning and the depth that is contained within those steps. That they haven't been very mindful, very reflective upon the tremendous psychology, the much deeper meaning in them. You look at these steps. I'm gonna recite a couple of them to you. First 3 steps, I think some people have probably heard them before, or at least you've known somebody who's been at a program like this before. We admitted we were powerless over our addiction, whatever it is. These steps are used in all kinds of addiction programs. That our life had become unmanageable. Then came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Now here's a real kicker. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Wait, I can't, the power in this step is incredible when you really take it. When you really take it. Not on the lips, but in the heart. Made a decision. When we make decisions, they are conscious decisions. Sometimes we do things on automatic drive. Sometimes we do things without thinking. Sometimes we do things just on happenstance or just on impulse. That's not what this says. When we make a decision, a well-reasoned, thought-out decision, it is a conscious, deliberate act. It is something we choose in our heart to do. So here's the kicker. In this step, we say that we made a decision, a conscious, free, deliberate choice to turn our wills, boy, that's a key one right there, our wills and our lives over to a higher power, to the care of God as we understood him. Wow. No longer my will, but thine be done. Where have we heard those words uttered before? What a powerful message. Now, I don't care what kind of higher power you see in your life. This does not have to be a Judeo-Christian God-type centered act of the heart. It doesn't. It doesn't have to be. That's why these words were so carefully chosen. The real key is admitting that the way we've been going about things, the way we've been running the show, the charge that we've been taking, the decisions we've been making, isn't working. And therefore, we need to surrender. We need to throw in the towel and say, okay, no longer what I want, but what I truly believe in my heart. What I truly believe in my heart, my higher power wants. Whatever that higher power is. And we turn it over. The Greeks have a term for this. It's called metanoia. It means a change of mind, literally, but more in English terms, it would refer to a change of heart. It's when there's that shift, that internal shift, major shift in attitude, where we no longer do things on the same terms. We no longer see things the same way. We have a deep change of sentiment. We start looking at things a new way. Not our way. No longer our way, because our way wasn't working. Doesn't work. But the way of a higher power. And in so doing, things begin to change. Things really begin to change. And so when you look at these steps, the steps that follow, number 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs, then we're entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. Wow. Talk about a character-building program. For all that it is, and it is many things, it is many, many things. This program is, in fact, a character-building program. It is perhaps one of the oldest and one of the strongest character-building programs I know of, especially when faithfully followed in the heart. And you could look at all the rest of the steps They say similar things. And I've heard many people who have embraced these steps in their hearts later tell me that when they first began their step work, they never really saw it as a character building program. But they came to realize that through their active work of the steps. And they became so entirely grateful because not only were they able to maintain their sobriety, but so many things changed in their lives. So many new and wonderful things came into their lives because they began seeing the character-building nature of these steps. They became much more aware of how they were meant to shape character. So it's not like these tools don't exist in programs, but folks have to be held accountable, and they have to be held to account in a particular way. It takes a really trained professional eye to spot when someone is doing more than, as they say, talking the talk, but walking the walk. And how that is reflected is this. This is it in a nutshell. Because as I make the point in both of my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Character Disturbance, and I make this point also in The Judas Syndrome, change always occurs in the here and now moment. In other words, it's in the here and now moment. It's in the moment-to-moment interaction with somebody. It's in the here and now moment relationship that someone reveals the nature of their character. And if they're still thinking in the same twisted ways, if they're still harboring some of the same disturbing attitudes, and their behavior reflects that, their behavior reflects that they still hold a particular attitude, or they still think in a particular way. Let's say they still tend to minimize one of the thinking errors, one of the tactics of responsibility avoidance, minimizing things, making molehills out of mountains, trying to trivialize serious problems that you've caused. If they're still doing that, if they're still rationalizing for behavior, making excuses, still scapegoating, blaming others for things that they are accountable or should be held to account, they're still doing those kinds of things, then they haven't yet had that change of heart. And it's in that here and now moment when they display those kinds of behaviors that must be confronted and that they must be held to account. And that the feedback has to be given that despite what they might have been saying on their lips, talking the good talk, that they are not walking the good walk. This is so important. This is so important. So this is how you know that somebody is truly maybe profited from all those tens of thousands of dollars that you might have spent getting them quote unquote help. Help, by the way, that many times they didn't ask for and reluctantly accepted. And that you knew was going to pose challenges for their recovery anyway. So this is an important consideration. This is what I'm going to be talking about in the series of articles on my blog at manipulative-people.com. And I know from the comments that have already been posted on the introductory article that there's going to be a lively discussion among the commentators because many, many folks have had this experience. Many folks who have dealt with a disturbed character in their lives have also undergone the ordeal of trying to get that person help in a treatment program that followed one of these models. And many times these folks also had a problem with dysfunctional substance use, abusive substance use patterns, maybe even hardcore addiction. And so, therefore, I know the discussion will be robust. The series will be at least 3 or 4 articles long. There may be a fifth article in the series. There'll be plenty of examples, first-hand examples, with the names and circumstances altered to protect the guilty, I suppose, to ensure anonymity. But there'll be plenty of very relatable examples, and I know the commentators will have stories to share and helpful comments to make as well. And you may have something to share or a question to ask. And once again, the number to call is 718-717-8296. If you do, that's 718-717-8296. I'll be happy to take your call. I've been checking emails also at the same time because I think it is possible tonight that that I don't have an operating switchboard once again. It's quite possible that the switchboard is not routing phone calls from the New York office. If that's the case, I apologize. If you're having trouble getting through, maybe you can message me on email at my email address of georgeKsimon@sbcglobal.net. That's georgeKsimon@sbcglobal.net. And I'll see what we can do to correct this difficulty. But I invite you to go to the blog at manipulative-people.com and avail yourself of the upcoming series. If you know somebody who has someone in their life who's been through treatment or needs treatment for substance use or any other addictive behavior problem and is still showing various problems related to their character, maybe they're sober, maybe they're not, maybe they're working their program, maybe they're not. But if you have questions or concerns or comments, this series will be the series. And I'll also be talking more about it on this program off and on for the next couple of weeks. I'm going to try again. I'm going to apologize in advance. I've had many unforeseen technical difficulties because of the program that I have to use to record interviews. I've had many difficulties shaping up the interview that I did on relational abuse, spousal abuse, especially abuse done in the name of religion. I've almost resolved those problems, but I'm not going to promise you. I am going to target, however, a good portion of next week's program for the airing of a portion of this interview. I'm not promising it, however, because not all the bugs are worked out. And I've made the promise all too many times only to have to renege on it. And I hate that. I'm sorry about that. And I see a call coming in, so I'm going to try and take that right now. One moment, please. Hello and good welcome to Character Matters.
Yes, good evening, Dr. Simon. I just want to quickly call in and make a comment. It's a little off topic of what you're talking tonight, but there's something that you said about giving acknowledgement to a higher power and really walking them over. There's a point that you make a decision.
Yes.
That you're no longer going to do, your will, but you're going to do the will of that higher power.
Yes.
And I've called in and regarding someone that is posing themselves off to be someone of faith. And I'd been reading, in the Bible, Jesus is contending with the Pharisees, and they're really imposters. They're really not succumbing to a higher power, but they appear to be. And the situation is getting people to believe, in the faith community, that someone wouldn't come in and prey upon people who are really trying to walk the walk.
Yes.
Pray. I hope I'm making sense. I'm probably not, but
I think you are. Go ahead.
But just letting people know that it is possible for someone to come in and pretend that they are walking the walk, but all the while, because this is the situation that I'm having, is to convince people of leadership that this person is not who they're claiming to be, which is a very dangerous situation. This is way on the end of the spectrum.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that issue. I'm glad you raised that issue, and I probably haven't given that as much attention as I should. So, we're getting close to the end of the hour for tonight's show, but I really appreciate you raising that issue. And, the issue you raise is exactly why I wrote In Sheep's Clothing. If you've read that book, Well,
actually, my husband and I have been listening to the audiobook. I've been enlightening my husband, on what we're dealing with.
But you raised such a great question there. I'm going to do my best to address that a little bit next program. So if I fail to do that, would you remind me about it, please? I appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah, and I hope you enjoy the audiobook of In Sheep's Clothing.
Oh, yes, that, and I'm actually reading both of your books at the same time. I'm listening to the audio of the first book, and the Character Disturbance I'm actually reading, to just get some in-depth about the other character disturbances, because I feel like I'm dealing with more than one in my life.
Unfortunately, they're not mutually exclusive either. So
no, they're not. I'm seeing that.
Yeah.
They overlap a little bit, but there's still different, things that are different about each of, these behaviors that I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Some overlap, but some are very, very different.
Yeah.
And they interact differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your call, and that's a great question. And please do remind me if I forget next program, okay?
I will, and I'll try to be a little more succinct in my question.
Oh, you did just fine.
Thank you for taking my call.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. What a great question, and I only hope that I take the time to treat it fairly next time. It really does deserve some attention, and we'll do our best to treat it fairly next time. Well, we're kind of getting close to the end of the hour tonight. There's so much to say on this topic, but I really invite you to go to the blog at manipulative-people.com. The next series of articles is going to be a dynamite series, and I just know the commentators are going to have rich examples for you and a rich commentary that will be really beneficial. So make yourself a trip on over to the blog at manipulative-people.com. Also visit the counselingresource.com website. I hope you avail yourself of my 3 books, In Sheep's Clothing, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, and The Judas Syndrome. I'm especially proud that we're going to be entering the 20th year in print next year of In Sheep's Clothing with the new and revised content. So I'm very proud of that. And more foreign languages to come. And we'll be back next week with more of Character Matters. Join us then.